I fixed it now. My speakers were switched off.
Good, you're with us now, though.
Yeah,
I'm
I'm with you now. It's rather embarrassing, actually.
Okay. Peter, I have to tell you before the meeting gets started, the Wingsail Pro that I showed you the picture of
Yeah.
was destroyed in a tornado.
Oh no. Oh dear. That's a
But
shame.
there will be a replacement one of these
Did
days.
you do much sailing with it?
No, unfortunately not. It was in the water one time, and with no wind.
I saw some video of you attempting, but as you say, there was no wind at the time.
Right. But
So,
the previous wing sails, the little trial craft, the bionic broomstick worked very, very well.
I did. Yeah, good. That's good. That's good. Then the last thing I heard from you was that you were building a house or
Yes,
something.
we built a house up in Oklahoma, and
Yeah.
we had just moved in for a few months, and a tornado came through and did a
No.
tremendous amount of damage. But
my
we're all
God.
back together again.
Was it a real tornado with a twister?
And EF2.
Oh, I don't know much about. We don't have those much.
Yeah, well, it was a real tornado.
Oh God.
It took out all of our large trees that were
Oh,
anything
my
over
God.
12 inches in diameter was gone,
Yeah.
and it took half the roof off and totally destroyed my shop.
Oh no. Okay.
Well, like I said, we had good insurance, and
Well,
we're back together again.
we had some bad weather this winter actually as well, bad winds. But anyway, I'd like to thank you for being so interested in my design. And
Well, I really think that circular cam deserves a place in a museum for elegant simplicity.
it does. Well, I mean, not everybody appreciates it as much as you did to actually build two boats with it. I think you did.
Yes.
Oh, that's very good. Good. Are you heard about this meeting? So it's the first one you've joined.
Yes. Well, I joined last week, but I got here late. I misinterpreted the time difference, and and got to the end of the meeting. But,
All right.
but Zoom is a very handy thing for us isolated people now.
At the moment, yeah, I'm isolated here probably as much as you are anyway. But it's a difficult time, isn't it, for everybody?
It's challenging in some respects, but for an old retiree like me, it's not that big an issue. There's some inconvenience, but it's not a challenge to my livelihood or anything like that.
No, okay.
We're just trying real hard to stay healthy.
Yeah. So you're rebuilding now at the moment, and you'll get.
Well, no, actually, I had sold that boat to an aeronautical engineer that had actually been on one of the Walker wing sails in years past.
Okay.
But he hadn't picked it up yet when the tornado came through.
Oh, I see. Well, that was bad luck, wasn't it?
Yeah, but
you were down in Texas before, weren't you?
Yes, we were down in Texas, but we couldn't find a place next to a lake that suited us down there, so we moved back up in Oklahoma to a beautiful lake.
That's right. I think you may have had problems finding a suitable place for testing, really.
Oh yes, it's fairly suitable for testing. The challenge with the lake here is, and it's a moderately large lake, is it's extremely rocky.
Okay.
But like I say, it makes for beautiful water. It's clear blue water, but it's like I say, there's nothing but rock. And,
no, I see. So you don't have a good launching spot or anything?
Yeah, not really too good at the moment. Actually, where I would like to launch is still closed. They're rebuilding after the tornado.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And our weather's been a little iffy. So like I say, it'll be another 2 or 3 weeks before we actually put any boats in the water.
Oh well, I saw quite a lot of video of yours, and you did a lot of work on it. I was amazed what you did. I mean,
Well,
your system was
Yeah.
based on mine, but it was made differently, obviously, but it still did the same thing.
Yeah, like I say, and the broomstick worked very, very well. Like I say, I was real happy with it.
Yeah,
But,
yeah.
But
I don't know whether we should stop talking now. Maybe they want to.
we'll bow out until
It's okay for a moment.
Not time yet.
Well,
Have I got a moment I can ask a question? I think probably
Yes.
directed to Jasper. It's a question about using Zoom.
Yeah, definitely. Go ahead.
Okay, wonderful. At the moment, I'm using a link which came to me from John in an email via Miles.
Yep.
And that works perfectly, and that's okay.
Yep.
So can I somehow put that link into Zoom so that when I go into Zoom, it will automatically take me to this meeting?
You should be able to use that. You should be able to. I can give you another link as well that you can use, but that's a good link to use.
Well, the link works fine. It's just that I wondered if it was the standard way to go back to the email in which I received the hypertext link and to use it, or do I?
No. It's the standard. It's sometimes easier to go through the link first, rather than going to Zoom. And then what Zoom will do, Zoom will pick up the link itself, and you'll say, do you want to go via the browser or do you want to go via Zoom? And then go via Zoom.
Thanks for your help.
should we wait a minute or two longer? There's still a few people arriving, I think. It's only just gone. It isn't at quite past yet. So if you just like to carry on chatting.
Right.
Yes, hello.
Oh, hello, look. Christine. Hey.
Hi.
John.
Well, you know Alastair for sure, don't you?
We're looking forward to it.
Indeed. You've had a haircut, Alastair.
Really? That's not possible.
I was about to have a haircut when they said I couldn't. But I have brushed it.
Well, that should be good. Less wayward than that.
Can we have one or two introductions? We've got,
Oh, yes.
Well,
Perfect timing.
people are nearly coming yet. We like to try and introduce new people that have come for the first time. I think you're new here, Marcus.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly.
Yes.
I can.
Okay,
Anyway.
okay. I wasn't sure.
Yeah, we can hear you.
So if you'd just like to just say what your boat. I know what your boat is, but the other people may not.
Okay. My name is Marcus Lee, and I have a 42-foot James Warm catamaran. Her name is Curie Moana, and I've been a part of AYRS for a few years now, and I absolutely love AYRS. So I don't know what else I can say. I don't know how these meetings go, and so I was glad that I could actually do it on my phone. So please forgive me if it kind of jumps around a bit because I'm having to hold it by hand.
It seems fine. Presumably I don't really know I've not used it on a phone. Does that mean that you can only see one person, or do you see?
I can see 4 people at a time right now, and it just reminded me. I do have a tripod. I'm going to see what I can do about see about maybe shrinking the tripod here.
Bon appetit, Paul.
Yeah, you're fine actually. You're fine, Marcus. Your picture's coming across to me okay. Frank, are you from Melbourne by any chance?
Yes, that's correct, John. Is that right? I've got John.
Yes, because you had a problem with the time. It's slightly different in the UK to Melbourne. Melbourne, there is a Melbourne in the UK as well. I used to live near there, but your one's a long way off.
Yes. In the morning.
Yeah. Can you tell us, can you introduce yourself a bit, because I don't know your background at all.
Yes, I joined AYRS way back in the 60s. And well, currently I'm sailing a dinghy with a lid, I call it. It's a Hartley PS16. I've embellished it a bit with a lifetime's collection of paraphernalia. I'm striving to avoid joining the dark side using a mechanical hydrocarbon burner. And ULOs is the solution I'm working towards with that. And been part of a bit of a discussion, I think recently, on the DCA site about ULOs. I had a quick look at the AYRS site for ULOs and didn't come up with very much.
Well, you'll have to write something then. We've got a lot of interest in ULOs one way and another, and Alastair will tell us a bit about his one later, I expect. But yeah, there's I could make a list of about 4 or 5 people I know in AYRS that have made their own ULOs and are experimenting a bit with different shapes and angles and things. So yeah, it could be interesting. We could actually try and put a meeting together on that, but I'd have to get all the people that have made ULOs together, and then they can talk about them.
Yeah. Bernard here, butting in. We built a ULO for my 23-foot trimaran, the Cliss 2, some years ago. It's hanging in the attic of my workshop now, but I got lazy and got an outboard. But yeah, it was very successful. I should try and get a photograph of it or details, and we'll join in any discussion on that.
Yes, please.
And we've got a member in the north of England. He's not here at the moment, but he's made ULOs because he competes in the Scottish Islands 3 Peaks race, where you're allowed to use human propulsion on the boats. I think he's got a Contessa 32, and he said they can move that at about 3 knots with a ULO. It's not bad, but as soon as the wind comes up, of course, you can sail faster than that. Anybody else we don't know yet?
Frank.
Just looking around. Peter Worsley, have you been before?
No, I haven't been to this meeting before, but I've been in AYRS quite a long time.
Oh yeah.
And you may have heard of me. I started off making a boat which was powered by a windmill. It's called a rotary sailing craft. And I built some models, and I built one that you could ride on, and it worked quite well. But more lately, I've been interested in self-trimming wing sails, and I've devised a system for control of self-trimming wing sails. It seems to work quite well, and I've actually got a UK patent for it. And Skip, who you may see on this, has actually built 2 boats incorporating that system.
Okay, actual patent.
Yeah, I've got a granted patent actually. Yeah, but it's just for the UK. So other people in different countries that like Skip can build one if he likes.
Okay, yes. Well, we can, as a amateur Yacht Research Society, as we're all amateurs, we can build anything you patent. We can make one for our own use anyway.
Sure.
But, Yeah, I was talking to someone the other day about wing sails. He's trying to do it commercially, actually. And he's putting the control, the tailplane, if you like, but it's not going to be a tailplane. He's actually got it ahead of the main foils, which is interesting. It can be done. It's you have to arrange the control system so you don't get a positive feedback effect. Apparently, it can be done, and it may be more efficient that way round.
That's
Anyway.
canard.
Yeah, canard. Yes, exactly. Yes.
Yes, well, you could do it that way, of course.
Well, I don't know about it, of course. I think it's not the most obvious way, but apparently it's got some advantages. But I mean, you could tell us more about your wing sails, because you've been doing it for a long time, so I'm sure you've got things. Yeah.
Oh yes, I've slowed down a bit recently, I must admit, really, but I'm just trying to produce some more information. In fact, I'm thinking of writing an article, actually.
Hmm.
Hello, Miles.
Yeah.
Hello.
I'm just looking for other people that we don't know that might like to introduce themselves. Graham Crane, have you been before? I don't know.
Yeah,
Oh, you were.
Came in last week. I've been a member since the early 60s, I think it was. And in the mid 80s, I bought a couple of foam sandwich hulls owned by Jock Barrows, who some of you may well remember. These 48-foot hulls, which when I left the Navy in 1988, I spent a few weeks working for Derek Kelsall and got pretty familiar with his sort of foam sandwich techniques, and finished this catamaran in the 6-year project, I think it was. My family say, of course, it's a 7 or 8 year project, because these things do run over a bit. And now got a slightly smaller one, sort of scaled down 38-footer. Again, foam sandwich, sort of home built, which is sitting in the car park in Fareham waiting to be launched, or relaunched, I should say, having been finished in, when was it, 2004. But getting a bit ancient now, so thinking of selling it. Having bought a little 20-footer, a Medina 20, slight contrast in sailing.
Okay, sounds good. Anybody else? It's getting time we could move on. Claudine, have you been before? Or
Garner.
Yes, it's actually my wife's Claudine. I'm Graham Garner.
I'm sorry.
I'm interested. My catamaran, basically, it runs on electric, 2 10-kilowatt electric motors, and it's a Broad Blue 345. So we've been up around the Baltic with it. And what's quite nice, because I've got one generator on board, you don't have to pay tax on the fuel, because it's 100% for generation. The battery stores it, and then you take the energy out of the battery as you require, making motor sailing extremely quiet.
Oh, sounds very nice. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
What kind of battery is that?
They're actually Odyssey lead acid batteries, just 4 of them at 200 ampere hours each. But they go over, you can run it for over an hour without the generator coming on. Right. And then the generator comes on while you're still sailing or motoring, charges it up quickly, and then goes off again.
I mean, we've got a really good collection of, people and projects that people are doing. It's all looking very promising, I think, for the future of AYRS, really, if we can keep the society going a bit longer. Is it now? It's about 10 minutes into our time, so I think perhaps if Alastair would like to take over. Alastair, I've known for years. He's a member of the Dinghy Cruising Association, as me and Josephine are as well. And Alastair's one of our most regular attenders at our meetings, on the water meetings, and not really so much, we don't in the Dinghy Cruising Association. We meet mainly on the water, not on shore. So I've sailed with Alastair a lot. I'm very impressed with the little boat he's got, which people think would be very slow. And it's not really. It's actually, it's a very, yeah. Well, Alastair will tell us about it, shall we? I'll hand over now. Alastair, you okay with that?
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Right, well, good evening or morning or whatever it is where you are. I'm not going to do anything particularly technical in this. The boat is not my design. It's designed by a chap in America, and I simply built to his plans and have sailed it and been very impressed with it. Let's see if I can get some pictures up.
This is a bit I found tricky.
Yeah, getting the right bit.
Well done.
There we go.
Okay.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Right. It's designed by a guy called Matt Layden, who's an amateur designer, lives in Florida, and he's built a number of boats, but he built this to sail to the Bahamas and stay there for a couple of months. So he wanted a boat that carried plenty of stores, plenty of water, could sail in shallow water, and was reasonably bomb-proof. And you can see from this picture that he solved the problem of a small boat with a cabin. That most small boats with cabin, you're either sitting in the cockpit when the weight's far too far back, or you're sitting in the cabin where the weight's far too far forwards. Here he solved the problem because you sit in the middle and there isn't really a cockpit at all. You simply sit in the cabin with your head sticking out. The boat itself is 4.2 meters long. It's a very practical boat. It's 4.2 meters long because that's 13 foot 10. And in Florida, if it's 14 foot, it needs to be registered. It's 1.23 meters wide, which is the width of a sheet of plywood. You'll notice it's got a lot of rocker on the bottom, and this means that it actually needs at least 0.23 meters or 9 inches of water before it'll float. However, it will sail at any point in the foot of water. To get it down to its lines with all that rocker, it has to displace 640 kilograms, which is a little over 1,400 pounds. And it has a standing lug, or possibly a balanced lug, bit of a cross between the two, sail of 9.3 square meters. That's 100 square feet. And one of the weirdest things about it is that it doesn't have any foils, apart from that enormous rudder that you can see on the back. There are no projections, no centerboards, no keels, nothing on the bottom. The bottom is completely flat. It's ballasted with 70 kilograms of water, and when first launched with 180 kilograms of lead. However, I'm down to something like 50, 60, 70 kilograms of lead, as I've replaced the lead with batteries, anchors, chain, tin food, bicycles, anything you can think of. The great advantage of having a heavy boat is that if you think it might be useful, you can put it in and just take a bit of ballast out. It's constructed from plywood. The deck, the top of the cabin rather, is 6mm ply. The deck is 9mm ply. The sides are 12mm ply. And the bottom is 18mm ply with 4mm of epoxy glass on the outside of that. So as you can see, I don't bother to clear the stones off the beach before I land somewhere. Last week we heard from John about his rowing boat, where all the parts were accurately made and cut out and all slotted together beautifully. This boat's slightly different in its construction concept, in that you put it together and then cut the panels to the right size afterwards. I haven't many construction photographs, but this is putting on the deck. And as you can see, I've roughly cut out the shape of the deck. In fact, if you look around here, you can see a line of nails where it's nailed down to the shear. And after the glue had dried, took a jigsaw round it and then planed it to size. This has a great advantage that whatever mess you make of the boat, all the panels fit. The lateral resistance comes from the shape of the boat and things called chine runners. Let's go back. Chine runners are these bits you can see around the bottom. And some people think they're absolutely marvelous and magic, and some people like me think they're probably not that important, but quite useful. So this is one of the construction drawings. You can see the chine runner, the bottom plywood is wider than the sides. Mm-hmm. And then there's a big fillet that fills it in, but nothing sticks down. It only sticks out the side. So again, the bottom is still completely flat. When you're sailing, of course, the bottom isn't flat because the boat's heeled over. And in fact, the boat seems to sail best heeled at about 20 degrees, where the weather chine is just leaving the water. And therefore you've got a V-bottom boat, and the curvature of the bottom and the side are different. This is why it's got that significant rocker on it, because the bottom and the side together, when moving forward through the water, behave as a lifting body. And that's where you get your lateral resistance from. And the chine runner is really just a fence that discourages the water going from the high pressure side round to the low pressure side. The boat's quite narrow. Ballast is all at the bottom, but people do worry that it's a little bit tippy. And of course you can't sit out on it because you're sitting inside. However, the plans come with a set of with a stability curve, and you may not be able to see, but the curve goes negative at 165 degrees. So anywhere before 165 degrees, the boat should be self-righting. I've had it down to 90 degrees, and it certainly is then. I can't get it to go over. I have seen one capsized by somebody pulling on the mast, but he climbed up about this high, and he was a big bloke. Very, very stable. I have twice had it down with the sail in the water. Once was on the second trip that I took it outside of a sheltered harbour. I got the topping lift tangled up in the sail, so I couldn't reef it anymore, which I should have done. It was blowing a force 5. But even then, the boat was perfectly happy until a wave came along and pushed me over. By the time I'd realised I'd gone over, the boat had come back up again and was sailing again. The second time I went over, I'd very foolishly got myself broadside on some broken surf. And the boat just went over to 90 degrees. And when the surf had gone, it came back up again. No hassle. Let's have a video. A few years ago at the Beale Park Boat Show, I got some friends to pull the mast down to measure the righting moment, measure the force at the masthead. This is the boat in full sailing trim, with me sitting inside it. I gave her spring balance, 25-pound spring balance, to tell me what the load at the masthead was. Well, the whole exercise was a failure, because the only answer I got was well over 25 pounds. That works out at a righting moment of 350 foot-pounds, or well over 350 foot-pounds, which is more than's required to hold my wheel nuts on my car. So it is very stable. And when you see them release the mast, have a look at how good the roll damping is. Okay, accommodation. The boat is designed for cruising, so it carries a lot of stores and needs to be comfortable for living in. The floor inside the cabin is completely flat and is 6 feet long by 3'6" wide. So it's easy just to put an airbed in there. If you're more than 6 feet, I have in fact, since this picture was taken, I've cut this hatch down so it's flush with the floor to allow me to put my bicycle through into the forward storage. And so now, if you're more than 6 feet, you can just stick your feet in there as well. As far as storage is concerned, there's a bulkhead that you can see in the distance there, and there is storage in front of that between there and the bow. There's storage in this space, which you can just about crawl into. There are bins on either side, for storage, shelves on the top, and under this mat is the 70 litres of water ballast. I have a table I can use for chart work, which is folded away there at the moment. And you will see 3 cleats at the front here. These are for locking off the furling line, the topping lift, and the halyard. So all controls are inside. This line, which runs up this side and back down this side, is attached to the tiller. So you can steer the boat from anywhere within this space. Looking the other way, I'll put the table up now. There's a bin on either side, shelf on either side, control for the tiller, an uphaul for the rudder. The rudder's weighted, so it goes down on its own. And this orange line is the main sheet. The seat, where you spend nearly all your time when you're sailing this boat. This can be flipped up out of the way so you can sit on the floor. So when the weather turns nasty, you can sit on the floor, shut the hatch, carry on sailing from inside without any problem. As you can see, there are windows all the way around the inside. A close-up of the storage at the back here. I have a gimbaled gas stove here. The anchor is stored here with the rope in this bucket. This inspection hatch at the stern allows the mast, the boom, sail and yard, and the Eula can all be slid in there right up to the bows of the boat for transport on the trailer. So there's nothing outside the boat when you're moving about. Now, as I said, it's got a standing lug sail, and sail control is very, very simple. When you want to hoist the sail, you stay sitting in the seat. You haul the halyard up, which will lift the assembly off the side deck where it spends most of its life stowed. You then tighten up the topping lift, and then making sure that the yard is on the correct side of the topping lift, which it isn't at the moment. It will be in a few seconds. You simply slacken off on the furling line and haul in on the halyard. And you're sailing. Then you slacken the topping lift. If you want to put in a reef, you simply tighten the topping lift. And then turning slightly into the wind or just releasing the main sheet a bit, you haul in on the reefing line and let go the halyard. And down it comes as far as you want it to go. It's very nice to be able to tweak how much it goes down. And then you slacken off the topping lift and you're sailing. I found that it's possible to put in or lose about a foot of sail as you go through a tack. So reefing doesn't have to take any time at all. And when you want to get rid of the sail, you tighten up the topping lift, wind it down, and then drop it onto the side deck. And that's it, stowed for the night or for as long as you like.
Bloody marvellous.
It is.
Very impressive.
The guy that designed this was very, very clever.
Yes, absolutely. Matt Layden.
Yeah, okay. Here's the front end of the boom, showing you how the reefing line works. There's a drum, as you would have on a foresail on a conventional rig. The axle in there with the topping lift going up there. And this strut here, you need a strut because when the sail is reefed, if that wasn't a rigid strut, there would be nothing to stop the boom rotating. So the sail unwound, the reefing line wound up, and the whole thing just dropped onto the cabin top. Viewed from the other side, you can see again you've got the axle comes down, you've got the strut, and a bit of copper padding because this fitting was gouging lumps out my mast. If you're not sailing, then you're supposed to use the Eula. Not going to, even though John said I probably would, I'm not going to say very much about the Eula, except that in this situation, the Eula sits on top of a pin with a ball on the end. And there's just simply a hole, the diameter of the ball, drilled into the mast. and not very far into the mast. I found the best system with that was I drilled an oversized hole, filled it with epoxy, drilled the socket for the ball into the epoxy, and after 2 or 3 seasons, the hole has worn a bit deep. So I just scrape it out, fill it with epoxy, and drill another recess in it. I have a bit of bungee attached to the oar here, which goes to a line which goes up to a cleat on the deck. This was very useful when I was learning to stop the oar jumping off the pin. I find it less necessary now, but it does mean that the oar is permanently attached to the boat. So even when I'm not using the oar, I release the cleat, but the other end of the rope is tied to the boat. So this can be stowed along the side deck and is still actually attached to the boat in case of major emergency. I use the Euler standing up. I can use either hand. If I'm using my right hand, I tend to face backwards because the oar's over that side of the boat. If I use my left hand, I face forward. And one of the great things with a Euler is that you can motor sail. You don't have to get the boom out of the way so that you can get your oars out and start rowing. You can just pop the oar over the stern and start sailing. So if the wind's a bit light, as it was in this situation, you can just start rowing away, give it a bit of extra help. The guy that designed it thinks that you don't need an outboard. I intended to put an outboard on when I built the boat, but I decided, because my background's all in motorboats, but I decided I would not put a motor on for the first season, so I would have to learn to sail. The second season, I sort of never got round to putting an outboard on. And the third season, I realised really didn't need it. However, most of the people who build the Paradox, they fit an outboard to it. This is what was then the second Paradox in the country. On a trip that we made in company over to the Scillies. And as you can see, the outboard and the sheet don't really get along too well. People come up with all sorts of useful little hooks and things so they can unhook the sheet from the propeller and all sorts of things. But I found you really don't need an outboard for this boat. You can push it quite comfortably at 2 knots all day with the Euler. I have rowed this down the Thames. I think John mentioned some trips at the home-built boat, Rabble, run down the Thames every year. And the first time I thought, southwesterly winds, prevailing winds in this country. Thames runs from east to west. So, yeah, we'll be able to do a bit of sailing down there. I rowed 50 of the miles and sailed 5 of them. There were people at the other end were covered in blisters because they'd rowed it as well in standard rowing boats. I had absolutely no problems at all. Partly because you can keep moving about as you're sculling with a Euler. One big disadvantage of running with an outboard is that the boat will slam, being flat-bottomed. When you're sailing, because the boat tends to be heeled over, it's no longer flat-bottomed, and therefore it doesn't slam. When I was building it, I got onto some trailer manufacturers. of manufacturers of boat trailers and sent them pictures of what the boat looked like and said, can you suggest a design of trailer that you could make for me that would work? And universally, they sent me back something which would not have worked. In fact, what they sent back was, this is what we make. So I designed my own trailer and got a local agricultural trailer manufacturer to make it for me. If I was doing it again, I could make it a lot lighter because all of these rollers are adjustable. The wheels can be shunted backwards and forwards. I have modified it a bit since then. I've lost some of these forward rollers. They weren't necessary. And part of the requirement for this trailer was that I could drop the boat off the trailer onto the ground and pick it up off the ground, which means if I'm launching on somewhere with a flat beach, I can just drop the trailer onto the beach and wait for the tide to come in. Because of the weight of the boat and the weight of the trailer, it's a braked trailer. So I don't put the wheels in the water. This trailer works perfectly adequately without getting the wheels wet. In fact, in this picture, the wheels are actually further into the water than I would normally expect to be. I expect the tide was coming in and I spent too much time talking to John. But to get a boat onto the trailer, you simply hook on the winch and start winding. There are wheels on either side. If I go back to the previous picture, I've changed these, but there's a wheel where I've got rollers in this side. If the boat doesn't come on square, the rollers simply push it sideways so that it lines up square. Go away. Lines up square on the trailer. And you simply wind the handle and pull it in. Now, I tell people this is an old man's boat because you don't do any leaping about in it. And in fact, the most energetic thing that I have to do when I go away for a cruise is wind this handle to pull the boat out of the water. When it gets that I feel I can't wind the handle anymore, I shall get an electric motor on the winch. All the rest of the sailing is very relaxed, very easy. As I say, you sit inside on the seat, your head is outside. You don't feel as if you're sitting inside. It's interesting. It's a bit like in a sports car. If you drop the soft top on a sports car, you're outside in the weather and the wind's in your hair and but you're surrounded by metal up to your shoulders. Well, this is the same here. You're surrounded by wood and plastic up to your shoulders, but your head's outside, so you feel as if you're outside in the weather. However, I don't wear foul weather gear when I'm sailing. I sometimes wear a waterproof jacket. I have waterproof trousers because quite often I want to walk to the pub when it's raining. But for sailing, you don't need waterproof trousers. If it's raining, you sit down inside with the hatch shut. It's only in constricted waters where it's better to have your head outside when you might need to put on a waterproof jacket. Exhausting, really is hard work. I think this is a shot that John Lidston took. John's somewhere on the here with us. We were coming out of Loo. It's just after the one where I was using the Euler. You can see I've stowed the Euler in the ready position. When I'm not intending to use it again, it stows up along the side of the boat. And the fact that the Euler is curved means it fits neatly around the curve of the shear and doesn't stick out. Right. when the wind gets a bit brisker, here's a shot. This was also on our trip. I think on our trip to the Scillies. You can see the weather chine is just coming out of the water, and it's sailing quite happily. And this was in a force 6 in Chichester Harbour. As you see, I've got about half the sail missing because of the this weather, but it's making good progress, and I can assure you I'm perfectly comfortable inside. And the final bit I've got for you at the moment is a film that somebody made. I wasn't aware that this film was being made when it was being made, but this was in I had measured this as a force 5. I'm fairly well reefed, as you can see. Lost quite a lot of the sail, but still making good progress to windward. I have never been out in conditions when I couldn't make progress to windward. Had I known that I was being filmed, I would have stowed the oar. As you can see, it's still sticking out the back in the ready position, looking a little bit untidy. You'll notice later on in this little bit of film that the boat starts pitching quite violently. I was astounded when I saw this film because sitting on board, I wasn't aware that the boat was doing that. And I think the reason is that you're sitting quite close to the centre of rotation, and therefore you don't feel any of that motion at all. A couple of years ago, I sailed from from Falmouth across to the Helford with somebody else. And of course, when there's two of you, one of you's got to be down below, sitting further forward. And we had to keep swapping over because the person down below continually got seasick. And I'm sure it was simply because of the motion forward, whereas sitting in the seat, you just don't notice it. And you'll notice that even though this is in a force 5, I have no worries at all about the stability of the boat. I'm still sitting in my normal control position of slouching against the port side of the hatch. You don't need to move when you tack, you just stay there. And as you can see, making quite good progress. And that's about all I've got prepared for you. So if anybody's got any questions,
I've got one, Tim here. Have you got my voice?
Yeah.
You have got my voice, good. What are the hoops? You've got 2 hoops about that big on each side, one on each side. What are they for?
Right, that's for the stowage. When the hoop on this side, as viewing at the moment, when you stow the sail, it's held at the front. Obviously, the boom is held at the front by the strut that folds down, and the hoop contains the boom and the yard, stops them falling over the side of the boat.
I see.
The one on the other side, there's a fitting forward at the end of the oar goes into a hoop up on the deck. In fact, you can just see it there, that white thing on the deck.
Yeah.
That the end of the oar goes into, and then the oar just sits inside that hoop so it can't fall overboard. So yeah, it's just stowage, but they're hoops so they don't keep catching ropes and things.
I have a question, Charles.
Yep.
Yep. How exactly do you steer it? You showed some handles and the ropes. What's under normal circumstances, your typical, say in that video, how are you holding the tiller ropes or tiller itself? What were you doing physically holding onto to steer?
Right. Let's. If I go back to an earlier picture. Okay, next one. Right, there's this rope that goes all the way around the inside, and I have a couple of bits of plastic attached to them that act as handles. You can hold the rope anywhere, but there's one on that side, on either side. So you just sit on the seat, and that is comfortably to hand, and you just steer it like you would have in your youth. Did you make a trolley with bits of rope to steer it with? It's exactly the same as that, or as you would, I imagine, steer a horse. you pull on the one side, and the boat turns towards that side.
But does it sort of stay? I'm just thinking. I'm just wondering how tiring that would have been a long voyage, or is the helm almost neutral?
Most of the time, when coastal cruising, and a lot of the time, when you're not actually sort of tacking up a channel or something, you just lock the tiller off. I've got, on the other side, you can't see it on this, but I've got a clamp attached to the underside of the deck here, and you just clamp the rope up into that. You lock off the main sheet, and I get through a lot of paperbacks when I'm coastal cruising, because the boat sails like it's on rails. It doesn't need a lot of control. Every 5 minutes or so, you tweak the steering if you're going a little bit off course.
Yeah, I had